Hey, Houston, can you hear us?
Hello, Mr. Can you hear us? Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, and welcome aboard the International Space Station. How do you hear us?
Scott, we got you and Misha loud and clear, and I'm joined with General Tom Stafford here and several hundred of your nearest and dearest friends who are very interested to hear from you and Misha. So welcome to the Baker Institute and Rice University.
Well, General Bolden, it's great for us to be here and be able to talk to you guys. It's interesting that this week we've actually been doing a lot of space medicine type research on board the International Space Station, basically associated with Misha and my stay here for a year on board. Actually, the first time we've done a bunch of scans with ultrasound and other diagnostic instruments in the Russian segment while using the lower body negative pressure device, which is really a first for the space station and a first for U.S. astronauts to do that on board. And hopefully we'll find out a lot of interesting data on how our bodies react to this microgravity environment, and hopefully understand some of the problems astronauts and cosmonauts have been experiencing up here with regards to their issues and other things that'll help take us further from Earth, hopefully one day in the not too distant future.
Hey, Misha and Scott, I've got General Tom is here with me, and he's celebrating his 40th anniversary. Now, I know you probably didn't know that, but this is the 40th anniversary of Apollo-Soyuz with General Stafford and General Leonov as the commanders of the respective crews. I think it's quite appropriate that we have him here, and I know he's got a few words for you, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Charlie. Scott, Misha, Dobry den. And it looks like you're in great shape there, and we're very happy to see the effort we started 40 years ago with Apollo-Soyuz or Soyuz-Apollo, whichever way you approach it, has led to this. And I'm very honored to be the chairman of the advisory committee on it. And we've pushed for a long time to have a long duration mission, and it's really wonderful to see you two up there. And you're looking in great shape, and I'm sure that year is going to go good, and you're doing great work for us. We're really proud of you.
Well, General, thank you, General Stafford, and all the other guests there. It's really a privilege to be part of this experiment for us on board the space station. I'm going to turn down the volume here a little bit because I'm getting a little feedback.
Glasses always help, Scott. I found that out. There you go.
Yeah, let's try that. That might work better, but like I said, it's a real privilege for Misha and I to be a part of this mission. The other thing that's great about this, and one of the things that we all appreciate, is the international component, and that's something that you guys started on Apollo-Soyuz, and it's we're now living your legacy of this partnership, and the International Space Station is an ideal place for countries and different countries and different cultures to work together on something that's important for all of us, and that's one of the things I like. One of the things I relish, actually, about this International Space Station is that international component to it.
Hey, Misha, you're having I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're having an opportunity to do something that not very many cosmonauts have done before, which is participation in a joint medical collaborative. You want to say don't do this again, or you got a comment?
Actually, I feel good. I'm very like experiments of our partnership because it's very technological, and I'm proud to take part in these experiments. It's very important for me, and I think for all of us. Thank you.
Who's behind the camera, Scott? Or is it just you and Misha in the module there?
Well, it's just me and Misha right now. I'd mentioned to Gennady that we were doing this event. He might come down and say hello. I think he was busy doing some other scheduled activities. Today's work day for us. Yeah, but we're just in the Japanese pressurized module. And the reason we do that, a lot of the PAO events in here, I think people wonder why a lot of the events are done from this module. And that is it's because it's out of the way. And there's a lot of activities that go on the space station. And because this is on the end, around a corner, we don't have a lot of people floating in and out of the camera view or us disrupting, all the other important work that goes on here.
Well, Scott, Misha, I was asked by a correspondent yesterday that when we did the Apollo Soyuz, did we ever think it would lead to something as big as the International Space Station? I always knew that it would lead to more cooperation and probably include more countries, but I never thought we'd see something that weighed 1 million pounds and include 15 countries. So I think it's wonderful, and that's one of the great things about it is that it can bring people cooperating together. I wish things could go as good on the ground as what you're doing up in space.
I often try to describe what this space station is like and the engineering miracle that it is. I think it's one of the most complicated things that we as humans have ever built. Like you said, it's 1 million pounds over the size of a football field with many different modules that were built in different countries. Some of these modules were never even connected to each other before until they were in space. Done while flying around the Earth, as you know, at 17,500 miles an hour in a vacuum, in extremes of temperature, in a somewhat extreme radiation environment. So all the hardware has to be hardened against that. Put together by astronauts and cosmonauts in these spacesuits, working in this very, very tough working condition. And then it works. It's been operating for, with people on board for 15 years now. The life support system is really incredible, how we, turn urine into water, the water into oxygen. It's almost like a closed loop system we have. We use the carbon dioxide to also produce water in a device we call a Sabatier reactor. So it's a lot of the technology that we need to go to Mars or elsewhere someday. We're learning right here close to Earth, where we have a very close resupply capability. We can return home in an emergency. We have great diagnostic equipment up here. It's really incredible the type of research we're doing on ourselves. Just this week, I woke up one morning, I think it was yesterday. 5 minutes after I woke up, I was drawing Samantha's blood, and then within a couple of hours, Misha was in the lower body negative pressure device, and we're doing this OCT eye scan on him and some other scans, related to pressure within his head, measured through his ears. The previous day, I was in the device. We had ultrasound this week in the negative pressure device. Like I said before, this weekend we're actually doing some work with the rodents. So we're doing rodent dissection for medical research that isn't how to help astronauts in space. It's how to help people on Earth. And we actually have an X-ray bone densitometer that we put the mice in before we dissect them. And it's just really this space station has really morphed into a state-of-the-art facility that will have benefits for years to come. And like I said before, started with your collaboration on Apollo Soyuz 40 years ago.
Hey, Misha and Scott, we're going to book you guys already for next year's summit. You'll be back, I think. And so you'll be a headliner here, the two of you. We've got lots of your principal investigators here, people who built your hardware. And I've been trying to coax them into raising their hand to see if anybody's got a question. But so far, they're being mum. So I'm going to give them one. I do have Dr. Joe Kerwin's got a question that he wants to ask. So.
Guys, is this on?
That's on.
Yeah. 40 years ago when we finished Skylab, I never thought anyone would experience lower body negative pressure in space again. It was kind of unpleasant sometimes. I want to thank both of you for the wonderful work and important work that you're doing, but I want to ask you, how did you make out with the LBNP?
You know, I had done some baseline data collection on the ground, and I didn't really notice much about it, other than I was doing it in a heads down position, was where I started, to kind of simulate the fluid shift you have in microgravity. So I would say it was somewhat of an uncomfortable experience, not too bad doing it on the ground. The first day I did it, which was Tuesday of this week up here, it was I was in it for much longer than I was the second day, because it was the first day we were doing ultrasounds and things took longer, and just the data collection we were doing was a longer protocol. So I was in it for probably, I think, twice as long as I was the next day. And when I was in it for a long period, and we're doing it at what's the pressure we're using, Nisha? It's about a 100 millimeter less than ambient here vacuum. So, and it's at a level that's half of what the cosmonauts do in their protocol to get ready to return to Earth. So, you know, it's not as much of a negative pressure as they use for some of their other protocols. So it's, you know, it's, like I said, half as much. But what I found after being in it for a long time, once I got out, was I actually felt, my head felt a little clearer. It actually felt like a, you know, in some ways a therapeutic thing, which, you know, is data, and perhaps, you know, the device has some merits in you know, affecting this fluid shift. If the fluid shift is actually cause for the, you know, some of these problems we've experienced, maybe it could be used as a therapeutic advice. And my subjective, completely subjective opinion about it was it kind of made me feel good. It made my head a little bit clearer by not having all that fluid in my head.
Hey, Scott, we've got a question from Walt Cunningham out here now.
Hey, Scott, how you doing? It's interesting as I look
Pretty
and
good,
see,
Walt.
you look pretty much normal from here. And 46 years ago, in 11 days, I lost 8 pounds. And put your personal observation on your body mass. You must be measuring from the time you get there and measuring in body mass. Any observations on what's going on? Is it just the exercise?
You know, people have you know, react to it differently. I think the last time I was here, I lost about 10 pounds, which is good because I could use it. This time, I've probably, you know, lost, you know, maybe 3 or 4 pounds. But you're gaining muscle mass. The exercise equipment we have, so you're replacing fat with muscle. So even though you might not be losing as much, you're getting overall more healthy because of our exercise equipment. The exercise equipment we have is absolutely fantastic. The ARED device is really a state-of-the-art. You know, astronauts and cosmonauts can't say nicer things about that piece of hardware, how good it is, how much it feels like real weight, and you know, by exercising on it, you know, 6 or 7 days a week, you really, you know, you're increasing your body mass. So, you know, I think in the past we've had issues with that, but here with the exercise equipment, with the Russian exercise equipment they have, the treadmill, the cycle ergometer, our cycle ergometer, our treadmill, you know, we get a lot of exercise. The food is generally, you know, pretty good. It's a good diet. You know, we have plenty of calories, so I think, you know, things that people have experienced in the past are not, you know, we're really not seeing up here. Plus, we're here a lot longer, so you get used to the environment and you get comfortable in it. And if your appetite was down in the beginning, you're up here long enough to have that corrected by time.
Well, Scott, it looks like you're really already starting to bulk up some.
Well, it's day 69, so it's day 69 now, so hopefully I won't be too much of a beast when I get home in about, close to 300 days.
Do I have it? I got another question over here. So,
This is Graham Scott. We've spoken before about the twin study that you're involved in with you and your brother, and I just wanted to pass on best wishes from all the investigators. We had a meeting with all the investigators a week ago. We've started to look at some of your baseline data. We won't tell you about that yet, obviously. But how is the study going from your perspective in space, the twin study?
So that study and all the other studies are going really, really well. In like public affairs and media events, people often ask us about the results. And as you know, I won't even know the results until well after I get back. So our perspective is that we're collecting the data. The procedures are working, the hardware is working well, and so far between the twin study, which as you know is mostly related to samples, but there are other scans and things that we do, the fluid shifts experiment, all the other life science experiments, the even the stuff not associated with us, the rodent stuff is really going absolutely outstanding. So, no complaints. Appreciate all the hard work you guys do to put into this. And I think this, the space station is really coming into its own now. We have really some fascinating work in all areas with all the partners involved and all the principal investigators. And hopefully we're going to see, and I think we are seeing already, and we'll continue to see great results.
Hey, Scott, for some of us who have not had the privilege of being on station, is the module in which you and Misha are currently operating, is that generally used as your comm center or your PAO center, so you do all of the videos out of there?
Yeah, General. So this is a Japanese pressurized module, which is a science module. It has a bunch of different science racks in all different scientific disciplines. It has a robotics workstation to fly the Japanese arm and the exposed facility, which is on the other side of the bulkhead here. There's an airlock for putting experiments in and out into the vacuum of space. There's actually what's called the JLP, which is up above us, which is a storage facility that's quite large and is very, very important while we're up here. But like I was mentioning earlier, the reason we do this these PAO events in here is because if we did it in the U.S. laboratory module or in the Russian segment, there's those are kind of thoroughfares when people are moving around the space station, and it wouldn't really interfere, but it would cause people to maybe pause and not kind of go into some rack or some storage, or maybe even talk on the space to ground if they're near the camera. So it gives us a little bit of a private area to do these where it doesn't affect the other people's work. And I might add, I like doing them doing the PAO events in here too, because it isn't a U.S. module, and it shows that this is an international partnership, and we could even do them in Columbus if we wanted to too. But it shows the international aspect of this, which is, I think, one of the highlights of this space station.
If I understand it correctly, the deployment of the CubeSats is done with a CubeSat deployment mechanism on the back of the gym there. Is that? Can you show us anything about it for those few down here who fly CubeSats and haven't had a chance to see this stuff or imagine it? And then you may have to explain what I just said in English.
Well, sir, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. At first, I thought you were referring to the flags we had on board, but perhaps you're referring to another piece of hardware.
Well, I was talking about when we deploy CubeSats. My understanding was that we do it generally out of yeah.
Yeah, I think I missed the CubeSat part, but yeah, so this is an airlock, and it's not for people, it's for hardware, and it's got a slide table, and you can put a satellite on the slide table, and we've been doing that, and you send it outside, and then the Japanese fine arm will pick it up and deploy these satellites into space. This is a great capability. I almost wish we could use it on spacewalks just to prove its ability to put hardware outside, independent of the astronauts, give us some more room in the airlock that the crew is in. So, but we haven't done that yet. The other issue is the space station's really big, and this exposed facility is got a lot of important science going on. You wouldn't want to disturb it, and it's also it's kind of a haul to get from the airlock that the astronauts go out of, or the cosmonauts on the Russian segment, to here. But it still provides us with an interesting capability to maybe, partner up this airlock with the U.S. airlock as kind of a technology demonstrator, so to speak.
Fantastic. Let me see if I got one more question here before they make me hang up.
Say, Scott, I'll say one thing. The TV presentation's coming through loud and clear, high definition. It's just like it's on a Hollywood set.
Hey, Misha, one last question for you, and it's, you've been there, like Scott said, now, 69 days. Pace-wise, have you made any change in your pattern from the way you did before when you knew you were only going to be there 6 months? Do you find yourself consciously changing your pace on board?
Of course, it's a little bit different. It's twice different in compare with 6 months flight. But my opinion, I understand that on Earth I will fly during 12 months. And I'll fly 12 months. It depends of mine, and I think it's very important you understand you will fly 12 months. I think Scott thinks the same, and I am sure our mission will success because I have a very professional and very good crew and very good friends on board. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, one of the questions Mr. Abbey just asked was, what's a typical day like for you all? Like you said, you got up the other day and you started with a blood draw from one of your crew members. You jumped into the LBNP. Is that typically what you all are doing, since you've got this incredible biomedical protocol that we haven't had put together by the international teams before?
Well, I think for Misha and I, there are a little bit more data takes than maybe your typical crew member would have. But one of the great things about working up here is the typical days are rare. It's quite often we go from maybe a day like yesterday where we're doing the lower body negative pressure to a day like Terry and Samantha had, where they were fixing one of the spacesuits. They were doing a procedure that took them all day, that required them to remove a fan pump separator on one of the spacesuits that separates the water and moves the air around inside, and replace it. And this is something that's generally done on the ground. We've done a few of them on board, but it was never intended to be done on board. So that's kind of a typical day, having to, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, Terry and I spent almost a whole week fixing one of the CEDRAs, the carbon dioxide removal assembly. This is another activity that we weren't really planning to do on orbit, but we did. Some days you're working more science, other days more maintenance. We had SpaceX up here recently, which required, I don't know how many hours of cargo ops ops. This Sunday we're doing the rodent dissections on 4 of the rodents. So it's, there's not the typical day. We generally get up sometime between 6 and 7, have the daily planning conference, around 7:30. So your workday sort of starts when you wake up. You start getting ready and preparing for things. Of scheduled work, and it's somewhat confusing that people will hear, well, we only work 6.5 hours. And that's like scheduled work activities. But a lot of times those activities take longer than 6.5 hours. And plus there are all these other things that you have to do up here that are part of just maintaining your daily life that take time. So the workday actually goes from, for me, from the time I wake up until about 8 o'clock at night, 8:30, and then I go to bed about 10:30. So with all the work and the exercise you do every day, it's quite a full day, and there really isn't a typical day.
Scott, one thing you brought up was one thing I experienced in all 4 of my missions. Even though you plan it, everything takes just a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I understand the ground's position about how they want to get the most out of us, so they generally schedule us for the amount of time they think it's going to take, not the amount of to give us more time just in case it runs long. So it's human nature to do that. They want us doing as much stuff as we can, and I understand that. But yeah, you're quite right. It is often that things run long, and we have to just adjust to them.
Hey, Scott, you all have been real gracious with your time, but before we do get out of here, let me give you and Misha an opportunity to. We've got an incredible team of folk down here from almost every country that participates on station, and some that don't. Any question or questions that you might have of any of them to think about, not to answer, but to think about as we go through the next day and a half of this annual summit that's focused on making life better for you and crews that are going to fly even longer than you one of these days, hopefully on a journey to Mars and farther. See, he's pondering.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, I don't think NASA and the partnership has done the best job they could in selling the value of the space station. In explaining the type of research we do here, how important it is, and explaining it in terms that the general public can understand. I sometimes read some of the just the explanations, for lack of a better word, the summaries of the science experiments that try to explain what we're doing and why and what the results are, and I sometimes have a hard time understanding them. So, I would challenge folks, because I know that we got great scientists and they do great things and we're learning great things, but I would challenge people to try to do it, to explain it in a way that the taxpayer and the people that are investing in the facility can really understand and appreciate. And I know it's not easy. But it's I think it's something that's very important, and I think it's something that's definitely doable.
Misha, you got any messages for me that I can take to Igor when I meet with him in Paris? Because we're going to stick our heads together and figure out how to be better partners than we are now, which I think we're pretty good.
I remember our meeting in Paris, you are right, and I just can say hello. I'm glad to hear your voice, and I hope we will meet again after our flight, after our mission with Scott, and I'm sure our mission, I repeat, will be success.
Hey, well, you guys, you've been great taking your time, and I know you got a lot of work to do. From all of us down here, thanks so very much for being so gracious and letting us come into your home. And you all take care. We're thinking about you all the time.
Good luck.
Yes, sir, and it's thank you, and it's a real pleasure to be able to talk to you guys today. Thank you.
And Houston, this is Rice, and I think we're done.
So that concludes our discussion with the space station crew.